Hello and welcome to a Project Cars 2 video where today we have round 2 of the Apex Online Racing Clio Cup League with 2 races from the Sakitto Sprint Circuit. Now unfortunately my actual recordings that I did when I was actually racing in this league for this round, unfortunately there were some technical issues which meant that the footage recorded from those 2 races was completely unusable, but fortunately I did save the replay post-race, so we do have the actual footage and I'm going to be using that instead. So that means that there isn't going to be any qualifying, and instead we are going to be diving straight in with race 1 from the grid. And as this is the first race, it's going to be a 20-minute sprint race, just waiting for that green light which is there, so getting a launch of the line here that seems to be fairly good, starting 15th position on the grid due to our poor qualifying session that we had beforehand, not quite getting a good lap in, so starting way down the field from where I would have liked to have been, getting up into 13th place as we come in towards turn 1, then just nipping that position away from Ticklish Pickerwickle. We now have got a whole bunch of cars in front that we want to try and get past as soon as we possibly can, but they're going 2x2 formation as we're on the run down towards turn 3 here, just nipping a little bit of dirt off the inside there as we come through at the apex. Guys still going side by side, so I'm just waiting for a gap to basically open up for an opportunity for me to go through as one of the guys goes and runs out of road there. That's going to be a freebie for us, so we're now up into 12th position, good 3 positions on the opening lap. Just coming through the long left-hander here. The 2 guys are still side by side in front of us, and they're going to be, as they're coming towards the apex of the first turn, WMDR Martin there getting very sideways. This is our opportunity to try and sneak through, but he comes and pinches me right at the apex there. Just about managed to read that and kind of got out of that one before contact, coming under threat from King Kodiak behind, who was obviously trying to seize the opportunity with me losing the momentum and speed there, getting pinched at the apex just before crossing underneath the bridge, underneath the other part of the track. But WMDR Martin has gone and run across a little bit wide there and over across the chicane. Has gone to make contact with my car. Has gone and pushed me off onto the gravel. This is going to demote us way down the order as we're trying to recover back onto the circuit. We managed to do so, but obviously we lost all the speed and momentum there as we're now onto the long start-finish straight, dropping down into 20th position. Could possibly come under threat and possibly lose 20th and drop down into 21st as well, and indeed we do, just as we're coming in towards the first turn. Big puff of smoke there from the guys up in front of one of them, was very much sideways, trying to take that 20th position back almost immediately as we're coming out the exit of turn 2 and on the run down towards turn 3. It's a side-by-side drag race down towards the third corner as a couple of cars up in front have gone and made contact. That's one of them off through and into the wall, side by side with Nyla as he goes and nurses me off onto the dirt and the gravel there, just about managing to get back onto the circuit with DH Gamer on my left hand side somewhere along the line, but he goes and settles in behind. So we are up into 19th position as Nyla goes a little bit wide there, but could have possibly been up into 18th, but we got forced off the road by the car in front. But still no real harm, no real foul at the moment, as one of the cars goes very sideways there through the right-handed turn. That's going to cost him all sorts of momentum and speed as we go underneath the bridge. A little bit of contact there between myself and Nyla, trying to squeeze through the gap that ended up closing, and didn't really have any room to go through either way. We did manage to get the 18th position, and it's Nuno Aparicio who had that slight slide, had a pretty big slide going through that second right-hander. We got a much tidier run coming through the final chicane than Nyla did. This is going to be our opportunity to slip up alongside, and he backs out of it as well, allows us to slip on through. So now it's Royalty that is going to be in our sights. That's the car directly in front of us. Is going to be the battle for 16th position now, as Nyla has dropped to about 4/10 off the back of me, just trying to take turns 1 and 2 as neat and tidy as possible, trying to focus on the exit and carry the speed through. Getting a pretty good run here at Royalty, but the entry to these few corners, this S section, is pretty much single file. There's no real opportunity to overtake unless the other guy makes a major mistake and runs out wide. It could be tighter here on the outside, on the exit, sorry, of the right-hander. Should open up this long left-hander a little bit more, but didn't quite hook in towards the apex, which did cost me some speed and momentum as I had to lift out the throttle a little bit more than I would have wanted to have there. Coming into the first of these 2 right-handers. First apex very quick. Royalty going a little bit deep, but manages to save it there for the second 90-degree right-hander. So we're still in behind at the moment, just a slight breathe on the throttle as we go into that long right-hander there. It's nearly completely flat out. It is completely flat out if you do get the line just right. Coming through here, it's just a short dab of the brakes, just trying to attack the curbs as Royalty goes and gets the line very, very wrong there and rides over the dirt and grass. I think he just about managed to gather the car back up and keep it out the walls, but obviously that's now us up into an easy 16th position. One more position and then we'll be back to where we were at the beginning of the race. But as you can see, there's a good 2.5 second gap to Mad Hayes up in front, so we'll see what we can do here on this lap to try and close down the distance and see if we can get nearer to him. But we've got our work cut out for us a little bit, and as you can see, 15.5 seconds there or thereabouts off the race leader, which is my teammate Mr. Van Orman, up there at the head of the field, who's about 8 tenths clear of Jorger in P2. So just had a nice tidy run through the S's section. Now coming up to the double right-hander, braking just before the 50-meter board here on the left-hand side, chucking the car in, hooking up onto 2 wheels, then dropping down into second gear for the second degree 90 right-hander, just straddling the curb on the exit there, trying not to lose too much traction on the serrated curb. Just again a slight breathe on the throttle coming through the long right-hander, not touching the brakes at all, just chucking the car in and then just lifting out the throttle a little bit. Do just a short dab of brake there, coming into the chicane, hooking up the line, really nice there, nailing the apexes all the way through. This will give us a good run coming onto the start-finish straight. But as you can see, about 2.9 seconds off of Mad Hayes on the previous lap, who was just a few hundredths of a second quicker than ourselves. But we'll see what we can do in closing that gap down, as it seems like there's a few more cars up ahead as well. And eventually we got to lap 9 is when we closed up onto the back of Mad Hayes, and also King Kodiak as well, which is the car just in front there within a second, and the two of them battling away. It's cost them some time going through the first couple of turns. Wasn't really hard battling between the two. I think just King Kodiak was very sideways going through turn 2 there, which cost both of them some speed and momentum. But with a much neater run coming through the S's section, I've now closed right up onto the rear bumper of Mad Hayes, so I'll be wanting to try and get past him as soon as I possibly can. Obviously with this sprint race there is a reverse grid order for the top 16 positions, but the top 20 positions all score points, and obviously the higher you finish in the first race, the more points you'll score. As King Kodiak goes and makes a big mistake there, cutting across the inside of the second of the 2 right-handers. This is going to cost him 2 positions as he's going to settle in behind myself. Mad Hayes also going through and popping himself now up into 13th place. So we're now into P14, looking to try and get a nice tidy run coming into the chicane here. There's one of the cars off on the left-hand side of the circuit trying to rejoin, so that's going to be us now up into P13. Another nice freebie there for us without too much effort. And as you can see, we've had a pretty good run at Mad Hayes coming off the exit of the final chicane. We're going to be side by side as we're drag racing down towards turn 1. We've got a back marker up here just in front of us, I believe, as it is indeed it is. It's Alan that's 3 seconds up the road. A little bit of contact there between myself and Mad Hayes as he was trying to switch back underneath me. I didn't quite see him, but he's still very much there, although King Kodiak has managed to benefit from that little bit of contact and snuck on through to demote Mad Hayes down into 14th position. Probably should have left him some room at the second apex, as he was very much alongside, just not quite 100% fully up alongside me. I think he was about 50% of the way up alongside, but both of us, neither of us spun. We both got through the corner fairly cleanly, apart from the door panel rubbing. So we continued on as we were, and now got some clear air up in front. It's King Kodiak, who is behind by about 6 tenths of a second. So coming through the long right-hander, climbing up the hill. You see a gaggle of 3 cars. Nice trio up in front. Hopefully the 3 of them will all battle away as we clobber the curbs there, going through the final chicane, trying to maximise and carry as much speed through that section as we possibly can. And then jumping on again by another lap or so. Still a gap to myself and Alan, but there's a bigger train of cars up in front now. King Kodiak is still holding on to the back of me. He's just under half a second behind as we go and hammer the chicane real hard there, and end up actually picking up a slowdown warning as well. So pulling over to the right hand side, lifting out of the throttle, trying to pay back that time. Ideally, before we get down towards turn 1, you can hear me lifting out. King Kodiak's going to slip on past. I'm going to concede the position to him. And I think we do manage to clear the penalty before we get to the first couple of turns. So that's a little bit frustrating. Just took a little bit too much off the inside of the chicane. Just kind of went over the white lines by all 4 wheels. It's very, very marginal, but was accurate. And then getting a slowdown warning, which I decided to clear rather than actually take. It probably would have been more beneficial to actually take that hit and continue on and just see what it does at the end of the race. You can see that I've got a much better run coming off the exit of the long left-hander here than King Kodiak, but not going to be able to quite carry the speed and momentum to get far enough alongside for these 2 right-handers. So just settling in behind. There's 5 cars still battling away up in front, which would be pretty good for us if they keep trying to fight for position. It will allow us to close up a fair bit more, as one of the cars has spun off. There's a big puff of smoke. I think there's a couple more cars involved with contact, and indeed there is 3 of them, both myself and King Kodiak managing to slip on through. So that's 3 positions gained. We're now up into P9. We've got 2 cars here who are obviously caught up in the melee, have lost an awful lot of momentum, and are now just up here in front of myself and King Kodiak. We've got just a few more laps in this race remaining before we come to the end. You can see King Kodiak running a little bit deep and a little bit wide there, locking up the inside front tyre. That's going to allow us to gain a few car lengths, but he's carried a little bit more momentum off the exit of the turn there, so he's going to extend that gap back out, close up to 2 drivers up in front. But both of us will be eager to try and gain as many positions as we possibly can before the end of the race, to try and pick up as many points as we possibly can. King Kodiak just a little bit of a dabble of brakes there, flicking it into the left-hander. I didn't actually lift off the accelerator or touch the brakes at all, so we've managed to gain a little bit of ground up onto the rear bumper of his car, but there's no real opportunity to pass in these sequence of corners here, so you just got to try and get the good run going through. Coming into the long right-hander now, brake lights flashing up in front. King Kodiak running a little bit wide, but managing to keep it on the tarmac. Again, more flashes of the brake lights as we come into the chicane, closing up a bit more ground there. Bit neater and tidier this time, not having to worry about a payback penalty as one of the guys goes and runs out wide. That's Gerard Gaval. So that's going to cost him 3 positions, as Alan is now a little bit slow. King Kodiak slipping on past. I'm going to be trying to go around the outside of Alan as we come into turns 1 and 2, but it's very difficult to try and swing it around the outside there. Alan going a little bit deep. Well, he didn't really actually go deep, to be fair. He looked like he was going to be carrying a lot of speed and momentum into the apex of the second turn, but he's managed to bring it back and hold onto it quite nicely. See, getting very, very close. Coming through the SS section, just trying to line myself up and try and get the good run through, hook up the apex is a little bit better as King Kodiak goes a little bit far over to the left, manages to bring it back online though for the left-hander here. You can see that Alan is starting to try and threaten him a little bit just up in front, switches to the other side to have a look to the inside coming into the left-hander, but that's not really going to work for him there as King Kodiak trying to carry as much speed as he possibly can, rear end snaking around, trying to break a little bit loose and away from him. Alan is still there between myself and KK for the moment. Again, King Kodiak using all the road available through the long right-hander on the exit there. Coming through, starting to pull out a few car lengths as Alan doesn't have necessarily the best and neatest run there through the chicane. That's going to be our opportunity to slip on up past. This is a drag race between the 2 of us as we're approaching the start-finish line now, and we do come across the finish line in P7, but we've got 1 more lap or so as you get very, very sideways there under braking coming into the first of the two corners. Managed to gather it back up there and hold on to it. We've got back marker up in front as well that we are rapidly approaching. If my memory serves me correct, it doesn't actually interfere with us at all here as we make our way through the S section. King Kodiak's got a few car lengths between myself and him at the moment. And indeed, back marker gets well out of the way by taking to the gravel there, just to make sure he's not interfering with us in any shape or form. Coming into the first of the two right-handers, gaining about a car length or so there. Pretty much equally matched coming through the second right-hander. What can we do about this long right-hander here? We're going to be neater and tighter to the apex on the inside. Similar line coming out through the exit. Both of us not really gaining any ground over each other. Coming through the final chicane now. KK managed to keep it relatively neat and tidy. I've got a fairly decent run going through there as well. We're approaching the start-finish line. This is the final lap of the race, but it looks like King Kodiak is going to hold off for 6th position. I'm going to come across the line in P7, and that is going to be the end of race 1. So we'll jump ahead to race 2 now, and as you can see, we've had some condition changes for this race. We were dry in race 1, but now here in race 2, which is the 40-minute race, it is very much wet. Good thing is, with these Clio Cup cars, they're not really too heavily impacted by the large live track puddles, so we can use those without having to worry about trying to dodge and avoid them too much. They will have some impact later on in the race when the puddles get a lot deeper, but for the most part, we should be fine to take the usual line. But yeah, starting in P11 this time round, after the grid got placed in reverse grid order, or should I say the top 16 got placed in reverse grid order. It's going to be a 40-minute feature race, just warming up into the 2x2 formation as we're coming up towards the chicane, but there's a few big gaps at the moment. So the leaders are slowing down now, and should be forming up into the formation that we should be in. A couple of the cars alongside me getting a little bit mixed up as to where exactly they should be. Mad Hayes should be over on the right hand side, and Alan should be alongside me on the left, but seeing as they weren't necessarily taking their proper positions, I'm going to be situating myself here as there's a glitched out car there in the replay that wasn't actually there for the race, but now we get the green flag. We're underway, racing. One of the guys immediately pulling over to the side of the road, so that's going to be us up now into P8. A little bit of a confusing start there, but just basically placed my car where I thought that I should have been. No one really complained, and we went away racing. We got a better run here coming off the exit turn 2, trying to make our way past Elaine Rake, but he gets a little bit forceful and sticks his elbows out and shoves us over to the side. Just about managed to regather the car back up under control, but we've lost the position to King Kodiak, so we dropped down into 9th position now. So coming through the S section, looks like we've been a little bit neater and tidier than some of the guys up in front, closing right back up onto the rear bumper of King Kodiak, who we were battling away with in the last race round, or race 1 of round 2. Here there are 2 races per round. Now coming into 2 right-handers, a few of the guys being a little bit more slow, a little bit more cautious than we were in race 1, taking out a couple of the cones there as King Kodiak climbing up all over the curb on the inside of the long right-hander. Now starting to approach the chicane. Obviously with all the spray coming off the cars in front, it's a little bit difficult to actually get an idea as to where the circuit actually is. I think I may have cut the entry slightly as we were coming into the final chicane there, but we'll keep on pushing nonetheless. If we get the slowdown warning, don't manage to clear it in time, we'll just take the hit with the time penalty. But usually in the wet conditions, they're pretty easy to clear before you get to the next braking zone, where there's a few people braking a little bit earlier as we come into the first two turns properly for the first time at full racing speed. Closing up onto the back of KK here, going through the first couple of turns. It's one of the cars is spinning off to the right hand side of the circuit there. That's going to be a freebie as there's contact there between a couple of the drivers. So we're now up into P7. A few of the cars up in front a little bit slow as we're coming through the S section, so that's allowing us to close up, and we've got a good 6-car train here. 7 cars if you count the car, the white car at the head of it, which is the race leader. So the top positions all within eyesight at the moment, which is good at this early stage in the race. I've got a couple of cars fairly close to the back of me as well. So the guys are just taking it relatively cautious, just battling away with a few positions. It's a little bit slow there through the apex of the second right-hander. You can see that King Kodiak managed to gain a whole load of ground ahead of me. I was expecting him to be a little bit slower going through that with the spray, but instead he actually went a little bit aggressive and tried to close up some of the ground that he had available in front of him. So now coming to the final chicane again, just trying to spot the apexes and the line through, as one of the cars looked to be a little bit sideways and kind of having to regather the car as it's coming up through the exit. A lane break here, a little bit slower. King Kodiak's now gotten himself up into 5th position. Will we be able to get alongside the lane before we get to turn 1? No, not quite, so we're just going to have to settle in behind. Following through for the moment, see if we can try and pressure him in some other way and try and nip the position when we next possibly can, getting a little bit of a run coming out through the exit, but he's managed to maintain the speed and momentum off the corner. King Kodiak having a look down the inside of what was P4 there, has managed to take that position as we come into the S section. He's now a little bit slower, lane rake, and the guy in front battling away for position, getting a little bit argy between the two. Contact, and that was Gerard Gaval getting shoved out wide there as a lane rake is a little bit wide here, coming into the long left-hander. So that's going to be us now up into 5th position and freed a little bit to try and hunt down King Kodiak up in front. We've got Ticklish Pickabuckle, Colonel McCoy and Tony Clifton, I believe, are the guys up in front of him as KK goes and takes quite a bit of curb on the inside there, the second of the 2 right-handers. So now we can kind of push a little bit more with our race pace, but we've got Jorgert just behind us. It's actually getting fairly close, within 0.2 of a second, coming through the long right-hander there. So it's not exactly particularly easy for me, but this time being a little bit further back from KK up in front, I do have the better visibility. I'm out of the spray, so I was able to see the chicane and attack it a little bit more than I had been able to on the previous laps. Now we're just coming down towards the first few turns. Again, being out the spray, I'm able to spot my reference points a little bit easier this time and attack the first couple of corners a bit more aggressively than we were able to. And we're now fairly close once again onto the back of King. Take a little bit of dirt on the inside there of turn 3. King choosing to stick to the tarmac as he goes a little bit wide out the exit there of the long right-hander. That's going to set us up for a better run coming onto the switchback, coming through the long left. If we can get up alongside as we come side by side now, coming up through the exit of the long left-hander, just brushing panels slightly as we come towards the first of the 2 apexes. King Kodiak's not going to give this one up without a fight though. However, I do manage to go and take that position away from him, just going a little bit later on the brakes and giving him the chop at the apex. So that's now us up into 4th position. I had to go a little bit aggressive there just to make sure that I got the position. I think King Kodiak did also back out of it a little bit. I thought he was going to fight me in towards the apex, but instead did concede the position without too much of a fight, especially when he clocked on that I was going to be going that aggressive into the apex. So now we've got quite a bit of breathing room as King Kodiak has gone and lost the momentum behind. We're carrying our momentum forwards and focusing on the top 3 podium positions, who 2 of them are battling away. Tony Clifton and Ticklish Pickabuckle as they go side by side coming into the first turn. They're going to be side by side once again coming through turn 2. This has allowed us to close right up to within a car length of both of them coming out the exit of the second corner on the short straight up towards turn 3. Maybe we can nick Tony Clifton's position here and get ourselves up into P3, and indeed we do when we go into the left-hander of turn 4. Now into turn 5, we're right onto the back of TPW, and we're going to be looking to try and take the position away from him as soon as possible, as we saw Colonel McCoy making a slight mistake there, going through 5 and 6 I believe it was. It's allowed us to close up to the back of him slightly. Now 1.2 seconds off the back of him, whereas I think the gap was much closer to 2 seconds at the beginning of the lap. So things have been looking pretty good and rosy for us so far, trying to apply the pressure and work our way through the field where possible. Coming through the long right-hander, got a better run than TPW coming off the exit of the turn. We're going to be side by side as we start to approach the chicane, but I think better of it and just settle in behind for the moment instead, and just try and get the need to run coming through the chicane itself and see if we can use the slipstream to try and mount a challenge into the first turn. But actually backing out of that move, we've gone and lost quite a bit of ground, so that opportunity isn't going to be there when we come to the braking zone for the first corner. So we're now on lap 7, under braking, gaining a little bit of ground on TPW, closing right up to within a car length as we come through the apex of the second turn. He lifted out a little bit there on the exit of the second corner. It's going to allow us to kind of creep up alongside as we come up towards turn 3. We're going to be side by side, and he does indeed concede the position as we come into the right, then the left. So we're now up into second place. That's going to release us and give us the opportunity to try and hunt down Colonel McCoy, who is up in front. We do have a second and a half to close up first though, before we get onto the back of him. So we're going to have our work cut out a little bit. So we come into the first of the two right-handers. Nice and tidy through there. Coming into the second one. Do remember in the actual race that there was a puddle forming on the inside of the apex of that second right-hander. It doesn't seem to be appearing here in this replay, as Colonel McCoy looks to be going a little bit deep, and indeed he does go wide there through the long right-hander. That's going to cost him some time, and indeed we are now within a second of him as we come into the chicane again, up all over the dirt and grass. It's going to cost him even more momentum as we come onto the start-finish straight. It's going to be 0.6 of a second there or thereabouts as we come over the start-finish line to begin lap 8. One more good lap like that and we'll be right up onto the rear bumper of him and threatening for the race lead, and indeed getting a better run coming through turns 1 and 2. Got ourselves within 0.4 of a second now. Just need to be nice and neat and tidy coming through the S's section here, hooking up the apex in turn 4 rather nicely, hooking up the apex very nicely in turn 5, trying to open up turn 6 as much as possible, trying to carry the speed and momentum through, which indeed we do. It looks like we're battling with Colonel McCoy here as he chooses to try and take the longer way around the circuit, around the corner, sorry, and try and hold the inside line coming into this right-hander. It's going to be side by side between the two of us. Around the outside we go though, and if we can hold off here coming into this right-hander, which indeed we do take the race lead away from Colonel McCoy. He tried to put up a little bit of a fight there through the two right-handers, gave him room on the first apex, but he wasn't quite able to get the run and try and battle into the second apex. So we have now got first position, and we just need to keep it nice, smooth and steady. Almost taking the wrong chicane there as we were coming into the final chicane, but just about managed to spot that I was going for the wrong apex. I think I was just glancing in my mirrors just to see how far back Colonel McCoy was, and then obviously when I ended up looking forward, I just saw a green apex curb and went for that one thinking it was the actual chicane. But we're going to be defensive now to Colonel McCoy as he's coming up alongside us. He's going to be here on our left hand side on the outside for turn 1 and turn 2. Just got to be nice, neat and tidy to hold it down the inside of these two turns and defend the position, which is exactly what we managed to do. Colonel McCoy slotting back in behind again. He's got a little bit of a run at me here coming towards turn 3, but not able to get up alongside, and I close the door shut as we come into turns 3 and 4. So managing to do a good job there of defending and holding on to the race lead as we come through the S section. At the moment, my teammate Mr. Van Orman is down in 8th position. I believe he started in 16th or 17th place, having won the last race. So he's well down the order, and someone's taken out the 50 brake marker sign, which is a key braking point for an awful lot of us here going into the first of those two right-handers. So now everyone's got to just use their judgment to make sure that they brake at the right point and manage to make the apex. But doesn't really trouble us too much. We've now got a very clear view coming into the chicane here, attacking the curves quite nicely, snaking the car back and forth through the chicane and carrying some good speed and momentum through to begin lap 10. But we're going to skip ahead 5 laps to the end of lap 15. We've got a back marker here up in front of us, and as you can see, we've been putting in some decent lap times and managed to extend the gap to Colonel McCoy to over 2.5 seconds, just under 3 seconds now. So trying to pick up the slipstream here off the back marker. Let's begin lap 16. A little flash of the lights there from him just to indicate that he's going to let me through coming into the first couple of turns, and indeed he does. So just nailing the apexes, just trying to be nice and tidy, hold on to the lead that I have managed to build over the course of 5 or 6 laps or so. Come into the Esther section now, a little bit shy of the apex there. Coming into the long right-hander, just going to hug the inside curb all the way around. You can see the live track puddle starting to build across the width of the circuit, but those 2 puddles that are just there aren't actually representative of what we saw on the actual race day and in the race conditions. There were it was actually just a single puddle that was between those 2 that spanned the width of the circuit. That was gradually getting deeper over the course of the race, and there was also a live track puddle forming up on the inside of the corner there, and also one that ran across the width of the circuit just after the bridge as well. But I think that one was actually present here in the replay. So here we go at this point, and notice that we did not have enough fuel to go to the end of the race. I was actually running on just a couple of litres, so we'll be diving into the pit lane here. This is a default setup league, and sometimes in the wet the game kind of struggles to put in the appropriate amount of fuel. So coming into the pit lane here and looking for our pit crew. Now what I was actually presented with at the actual time of the race was various different pit crews, no pit indicator or anything like that, so I didn't have actually any idea as to which pit box was actually mine. So I was kind of having to guess. Here you can see me struggling to actually figure out which one is actually mine, and I've now had to basically go through the entire pit lane because I didn't stop in my correct box. So we've got to go round again with literally just a couple of litres. So we're going to have to doing some pretty heavy lifting and coasting, obviously losing an awful lot of time already beginning that lifting and coasting in order to try and get round the lap back to the pit lane. But yeah, like I said, with the pit options that I had at the time, which I didn't double check before coming into the pit lane, I have everybody's pit well, everybody who was diving into the pits or planning on to make a pit stop, all their pit crews were present, and there was no indicator to show which pit box was actually mine. So when I came into the pit lane, I had all these pit crews staring at me. I had no idea which one was actually mine, hence the reason why I ended up kind of stopping in a random pit stall, finding out that the pit crew wasn't doing any work on my car, wasn't refueling me, then driving out, and then yeah, kind of having to go for another, or try another pit crew, but that not really working. So here you can see some of the other guys. There goes Colonel McCoy actually, who was in 2nd position at the time of going into the pit stops. Obviously a few people have managed to go 1 lap longer, but yeah, Colonel McCoy and Ticklish Picklewickle going through, taking a position, just staying out the way of a few of the guys here as we're trying to get around the circuit and back to the pit lane, having to ride the clutch an awful lot around the track to basically drop the revs and use as little fuel as we possibly can to try and make it back to the pit lane, and hope that I can actually identify which pit crews are actually mine. And obviously wanting to stay out of people's way here, especially coming into the high-speed chicane, decide to go across the grass on the inside and stay well off the circuit, just to allow people the free run through and not interfere with them. So here's the pit speed limiter line, jumping on that, slowing down. But I'm still having to try and use as little fuel as possible because I'm literally running on absolute fumes. And fortunately this time I'm the first guy coming into the pits with not really anyone following in behind, so I'm actually able to identify my pit crew much easier. We managed to do that this time round coming in, so I managed to take the fuel on board that I needed to. But as you can see, we have absolutely tumbled down through the field, down in 17th position now as we are approaching the pit exit. King Kodiak, who we were battling with earlier on in the race, seemed to have had a bit of a nightmare as well. I think he ended up having some contact and getting some damage, which forced him to pit earlier. But we rejoined the track in 18th position, in a bit of no man's land, running a little bit deep there going into the first corner as well, completely misjudging that, managing to gather it back up for turn 2. But yeah, 6 seconds to Royalty behind, and then we're 4 seconds to Mr. Ferret, who's up ahead in 17th position. So we got our work cut out for us, as we haven't got a huge amount of time remaining in this race, about another 10 minutes or so. So we want to try and make up as many positions as we possibly can as we go and end up having a bit of a spin there, getting caught out by the light trap puddle that was running across the width of the circuit, just causing the car to hydroplane. And that was the indicator to me that now that the puddles are actually deep enough to be having an effect on the car, because previously it wasn't really affecting the car too much. So we've gone and lost a whole bunch of time there, 5.5 seconds now to Mr. Ferret in front. So we're going to have our work cut out for us to try and close up back onto P17 after the absolute disaster that was the pit stop phase. Skipping forward now a few laps, we're closed up to within 2 seconds of Mr. Ferret, so we're now onto lap 21. About 5 minutes of the race remaining, so it's been a real struggle to close the gap. We have been taking time out of Mr. Ferret at a fairly reasonable rate considering the number of laps that we managed to do it in, but still a long way off from where it should be, which is up in the race lead, as Conan McCoy is now at the head of the field. He's got 3 seconds buffer to As Turbo, who's in second position. My teammate Mr. Van Orman is in third. So if I didn't have the issues at the pit stop and not being able to find my pit crew, would probably still be at the head of the field, and myself and Mr. Van Orman would be scoring some great points for the team. You can see we've had a much better run than Mr. Ferret in front as we're coming through the 2 right-handers. We're now within half a second, so we're going to be very soon jumping on to lap 22. Coming into the chicane here, Mr. Ferret going a little bit deep. This could be our opportunity, especially if we get the nice smooth run that we did going through the chicane. Now we'll be picking up the slipstream as we come onto the start-finish straight to begin the next lap, as Mr. Ferret goes over towards the right-hand side to defend the inside line as we're on the approach towards turn 1. We're going to be there on the outside, but we'll be able to make the move around the outside of him, and indeed he does lift out of the throttle and allows us to go and take the apex into the first corner. So we're now up into 17th position. We've got King Kodiak 4.8 seconds up the road, there or thereabouts. So we've got our work cut out for us there if we want to try and close up onto the back of him, and we don't have a whole huge amount of time in order to do it either. King Kodiak's a fairly quick driver here around this circuit. It's once again getting caught out by the puddle there, going through between turns 5 and 6 I believe it was, and we lose the position to Mr. Ferret as we try and regather the car back up onto the circuit, which we managed to do so avoid making contact with any of the walls or anything like that. But that's now us back down into P18. Hugely frustrating race here for me, especially for what could have been, and again catching the curb just as we were jumping onto the brakes there for the right hander, unsettled the car, just about managed to gather it back up once more. But yeah, first half of the race went absolutely brilliantly until we got to the pit stops. Slightly caught out by the fuel load that we were all given at the start of the race, having to dive to the pits in a bit of a panic, and then not being able to find the pit crew to service my car, and then having to go around again, heavily lifting and coasting to try and make what little fuel I had work to get me back to the pits to basically get myself refueled to then try and finish the race. Struggling to get the car hooked in to the second apex at turn 2. Managed to keep it within the confines of the white lines though. So we're coming through 3 and 4. Now into turn 5, hooking up with the late apex. Running across the width of the circuit there, going through those puddles. Now through the long left-hander at turn 6. Starting to slowly gain again on Mr. Ferret. Still got a gap, 2.5 at the moment. So we clobber the inside curb before coming into the 90-degree right-hander. Running out a little bit wide there, but managing to keep the car on the straight and narrow. Gap now 1.1 seconds as we're coming in towards the final chicane. We're going to need a good run coming through here to see if we can gain another 10th or so to begin the next lap. We got quite a nice, neat and tidy run. I think Mr. Ferret gained a little bit of time going through the middle of the chicane, but we had a much better exit. Managed to get ourselves within a second now. As we're continuing to chase him down, getting very, very sideways there as the wheels were locking up on the car. Managed to gather it back up onto the circuit though, and looks like we managed to gain a little bit of time on Mr. Ferret as well doing that. That wasn't intentional. It's more the car just starting to break loose and then me gathering it back up, but still trying to carry the speed and momentum through. And coming through the Esther section, we are once again a bit neater and tidier. Turning in just a little bit too early there for the long left-hander, but still we've had a bit of a better run coming through the Mr. Ferret, so we're eking down those car lengths between us. So now coming through the 2 fast right-handers, picking up the curb on the inside, and now pretty much right onto the rear bumper of Mr. Ferret in front. The car aquaplaning a little bit as we go through the puddle on the exit of the bridge there, the exit of the tunnel shall I say. And now coming into the final chicane, we just need to set ourselves up for a good smooth run here. There's no point in trying to make the lunge coming into the chicane. It's all going to be about the exit. Mr. Ferret running a little bit deep there. We're going to be neater and tidier coming through, getting a good switchback, and the run coming off the exit here. It's going to be a drag race between the two of us as we're coming down towards the start-finish line. Do we have the speed and momentum to try and eke and nose ahead? Indeed we do. We managed to get that 17th position just as we get to the line, and that is where we are going to come home as we finish the race there. So yes, frustrating one for me. What could have been, that could have been potentially the race win, but hopefully you guys enjoyed that video. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. Give the video a like if you did enjoy it, and please consider subscribing. But otherwise, thanks very much for watching. Hopefully I'll catch you in the next video. Until then, have fun, stay safe and take care.